Alright, so this is my video summary of the documentary Fabric of the Cosmos, Illusion of Time. My last one is a bit long, so I'll keep this one a little bit shorter. So they start off and they kind of pose the question, like, what is time? And the main points that I hit were that these are all ways that we measure time, right? We use the atomic clock, we measure consistent events like days and years and months, right? It's common things that we go through. Originally, it started out by being measured by trains and how long it took to travel from one place to another. That in and of itself, though, meant that we had to standardize how we measured time, right? The atomic clock, which is in Colorado, which is the one that they base the world time off of, it uses the cesium atom, and they measure how fast or how long it takes electrons to go around in orbit. With how they measured it back in the day, it was when one train would leave the station, wherever it left from, that was the time when it got to the next station. It would use that clock. And so again, it needed to be standardized as to how we measured it. But that doesn't answer the question as to what time itself actually is. It just tells us what time is it, right? Like, how are we measuring it at this moment? And then along came Albert Einstein. So Einstein, his thinking was he looked back and he looked at one of the great physicists by the name of Isaac Newton. And Newton claimed that time was a fixed rate. So what that means was that it didn't matter how much space you were traversing, time was always consistent. It always moved at the same rate, and it wasn't ever going to change. Einstein theorized that space and time are connected. It's the fabric of the universe, right? Ironic, because that's cool because that's the name of the title. But so Einstein basically said that if you are moving through one, there's going to be less of the other. So how he kind of showed this, I'll draw it out here really quick. How he showed it was with space and time. Right? It could be the other way around, but the gist of it is if I'm moving just through space, I'm not gaining any time. If I move through space and time, I get both. Or if I move just through time, then I won't make that much space. The example that they use in it is walking. So if you're walking quickly, the time is going to feel different to you than it is to someone that's observing you. The reason we can't really tell that much is because gravity actually plays a role, and it's the space that we're traversing and the time that we are losing, in essence, or the time that we're not using, is so minuscule that it just doesn't matter when we're here on Earth. So then they kind of move on to how time is a snapshot, and how it's like cutting a loaf of bread. So if this loaf of bread represents all time, all events that are past, present, future, current, right? If you cut right now, your cut is going to be different from someone else's cut. And they talk about how an alien, light years and light years away, if they make a cut at the same moment as us, or if they're moving towards us, their cut is going to come at an angle, right? It's going to come at an angle, and they're going to get here at a different time. Because for us, so they cut here, but because of all the space they have to travel, it's going to come here. So it could be in the future, it could be in the past for us. And it's that small angle creates a big or a larger space traveled. Then they move on to talking about time travel, because that's what everyone's interested in. And it is possible. So with a black hole, time is perceived as slower. So if you were to go and orbit a black hole, you would then, when you come back, time will have moved slower for you than for the people on Earth. So therefore, you're going into the future. With a wormhole, it's like a shortcut through space-time. So it's almost like a tunnel. So you would come in and then you would go back in time. So that's how you travel to the past. Then they kind of concluded with how time isn't directional necessarily. We always think of time as moving forward, but it could very well move backwards. They refer to it as the arrow of time, and it started with the Big Bang. They then talk about how if the Big Bang was the beginning, what's the end? They talk about how space is actually speeding up and it's expanding further and further apart. And so the end very well could be that black holes dominate the universe until the point that they even dissipate, and then time ceases to exist because we're just so distant from everything else. So that was Fabric of the Cosmos, Illusion of Time. Pretty cool documentary. Talks a lot about connecting space and time and how it affects us today. But yeah, that's it.